In 1853, Vincent van Gogh was born in the small town of Zundert in the Netherlands. His father was Theodore van Gogh and his mother was Anna Carbentus. When Vincent was 15, his life took a huge turn and he was forced to leave school and to go to work. His uncle hired him for the Gupelin Company, the largest art dealership in Europe. This was probably the spark for Vincent's love of art. Van Gogh had learned 4 languages, those being French, German, English, and his native tongue, Dutch. Van Gogh would regularly visit museums to know good art from bad. When Van Gogh was just 20 years old, he would fall in love for his current landlord's daughter, Ursula. When Van Gogh had finally mustered up the courage to ask her to marry him, she declined, saying she was already secretly engaged. This devastated him. Distraught, humiliated, and angry, he threw away all of his books except the Bible. Turning to God, rejecting others, Van Gogh constantly argued with his employers and often encouraged customers to not buy art. 2 days after his 23rd birthday, he was fired. Eventually, he found a position where he could pursue his religious calling and became a minister just like his father. He would be sent to a small coal town in Borinage in Belgium. It was said they would send ministers there for punishment. Vincent had viewed life a pilgrimage in which man seek God in a long and lonely path. Vincent was 27 years old and he had come to a decision. He would still preach about the dignity of work and the glory of nature, but instead of using his words, he would use pictures. Vincent van Gogh was about to become an artist. Vincent was 27 and considered a failure. He had no money and no ways of making any, but he was possessed by his passion to become an artist. He wrote to his younger brother Theo to what looked like an impossible plan to become an artist. It had seemed like an impossible task. Vincent had no formal art training. Him being 27, the likelihood of his success was very slim, but his younger brother offered to financially support him. Vincent's younger brother Theo also worked as an art dealer at the Gupelin Company. In Brussels, he was a well-respected art dealer. Vincent went to La Hague, a Dutch art movement. At the age of 28, he completed his first oil painting. He was a natural-born painter. There was little doubt in his work. In 1885, he worked on something that was considered his first masterpiece, Potato Eaters. It was a scene of what looked to be a family of 5 all sitting around a very small table. The room they were sitting in was dingy and had very minimal light sources. Van Gogh's goal was to illustrate the people's life as it was in the raw, how they worked hard for their food and how they were lower-class citizens just trying to get by. Van Gogh wrote, "I tried to emphasize that these people eating the potatoes in the lamplight, who have dug the earth with those same hands that they put in the dish, and so it speaks of manual labor and how they have honestly earned their food." He was 33 years old, and this was his first large work. He sent his painting to his brother, hopeful and eager that his brother would be able to sell his paintings. His brother thought otherwise. He told Vincent his techniques would never sell in Paris. Theo preferred Claude Monet and Gauguin, and thought their art was revolutionary. After the rejection from Theo, Vincent knew he had to go to Paris. After multiple letters exchanged among Theo and Vincent, Vincent had asked if Theo would let him stay with him in Paris, which Theo did not respond. Vincent, taking matters into his own hands, left and went to Paris on his own. In the 2 years that Vincent had stayed in Paris, he exposed himself to new awakenings, which made him have a different perspective on the world around him. For 6 years, Vincent worked frivolously on improving his art. His paintings got better, but he struggled with isolation and loneliness. On March 1886, Theo finally welcomed Vincent into his apartment. Vincent saw Impressionism painting for the first time and was amazed by how painters could capture light and time by using such bright colors. Soon, Vincent studied Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec, the great artist of the day. When painting portraits, Vincent and his friends would pose for each other's paintings because models were often too expensive. During Vincent's time, many of the new artists only painted when it was nice out. Some only painted when they were in the mood. Vincent, on the other hand, was dedicated to his work. He would paint every day and night. He thought other painters didn't have the passion. No one cared or felt as strongly as he did. February 1888, Vincent packed his bags and headed south of France, away from his brother. He wanted to explore the countryside and to see it never like he had before. Van Gogh would end up in a town called Arles. Arles was Vincent's ideal landscape, with a lot of color in which everything was beautiful and endlessly positive. Vincent dreamed of making a group of artists that lived and worked together. Van Gogh would attempt to create his dream by moving into an old, yellow 4-bedroom building. When looking for his house, he needed a house that suited his need for light. One of Van Gogh's most popular works is The Yellow House. It's where he had good light sources and worked day and night to produce artworks. He planned for this house to be a place where painters could come together and produce amazing art as one bunch of talented and dedicated artists. Yet sadly, his dream of this yellow house would not be achieved, since it lasted for about 2 months. When Van Gogh painted this, he was on a very scarce diet of little food and some wine, so his mental and physical state during this time were shaky. This painting represents a change and a new beginning to his life, and sadly, a foreshadowed falling out. Vincent also painted the bedrooms in the house, which he called his bedroom paintings, which are full of light and positive, uplifting colors. Even though he was portraying a happy image, Van Gogh was falling into a dark place, which he tried to distract himself by painting bright, light-filled artworks. I see it as a representation of how he wants to feel and how he wants his life and home to really be like. It reminds me of his other paintings of sunflowers which he drew for Gauguin, his friend and fellow artist. When Gauguin moved to the Yellow House to watch over Van Gogh put these paintings in his room and throughout his house. The colors of yellow were amazing to him, as he was not used to these kind of paintings or bright colors back when he lived with his brother. The paintings represented the change he wanted in his life and his perspective of the world around him. After his big move to South France, the sunflowers was also a reflection of his ideas of how the house would look when he assembled his team of art. The Starry Night is one of Vincent Van Gogh's most famous paintings of all time. It depicts his view of the town and sky before him out of his asylum room window before the sun rose. He painted this scenery a few times before coming out with the famous Starry Night. Through his east-facing window, he painted out of memory the night's natural lighting and captures the peacefulness he is trying to portray or maybe felt at the time. But the town in the bottom of the picture is a product of his own mind, which goes to show how powerful his imagination was to create this idealized town out of an asylum bedroom window. Even though people of this generation study and appreciate his artwork, he was very unpopular during his time and only sold 1 or 2 paintings in his lifetime, and neither of them were Starry Night. His art was not appreciated by artists of his time, and he was often rejected, and this drove him slowly crazy and made him very depressed. He had many psychotic episodes due to very poor health since he put all of his time and energy into his paintings. He ate very little food, and all the toxins from the paints he would use had to have a negative effect on his brain. As his mind went fuzzy, he started to ingest lead paint unintentionally by putting the paintbrush in and out of his mouth while he was painting, which had led him to go insane from lead poisoning, which can cause hallucinations, permanent nervous system damage, and can even kill brain cells. The portrait of Dr. Felix Ray is a painting with a backstory that would blow the mind of any fellow art lover. Van Gogh was very troubled at the time of 1888, the night before Christmas. Van Gogh would cut off his own ear. He had lost a lot of blood and would start hallucinating. He was thankfully brought to a place called Hotel Dieu of Arles, where he first met Dr. Felix Ray, who was working the night shift at the time. It was so said that the night of Van Gogh's stay, his severed ear was brought back to Dr. Felix and was kept in a jar of alcohol until it was one day stolen from his office. On the other hand, Van Gogh stayed at the Hotel Dieu for 15 days recovering from his injury before he could return back to his yellow house. When he got back, he painted a portrait of Felix as anyone would assume as a gift for taking care of him for all those days. The doctor accepted the portrait, but it was later told that he never actually admired it or took any interest in the portrait, and revealed later that his mother used it to mend a hole in her chicken coop. Van Gogh had always struggled with his physical health and his mental health in July 1880. It was said that Van Gogh went to a field close to where he was staying and started to paint, and later on in the afternoon, he had tried to kill himself by shooting himself in the stomach. He confessed his truth about what he was doing to the fellow innkeeper and his family once they noticed he had come back from the fields extra late and went to go check on him in his room. It had took 2 days before Van Gogh died from his injuries. His brother Theo was called, and he was devastated and said that he was saddened that his brother was gone, but was left a note by Van Gogh saying how thankful he was for him and that it was not Theo's fault. It was just Van Gogh was done and wanted to move on from this life. Even after Van Gogh's death, he has proven that hard work will never go unnoticed.